Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode. I'm delighted to welcome Michele, who has joined us. She's going to tell us a little bit about her story, what she's doing now, and how some of the things that she has learned over the years, specifically about suicide and mental health, can really help you if you're listening to this podcast now. Now, Michele, I obviously know you because you're one of my coaches on the NatWest Accelerator program. I know you've stepped away from that now and you're doing some amazing things. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and share your story with us.
Thank you, Nikki, and it's great to be here. And that feels so long ago since I was your coach. So I'm Michele D'Souza from Puzzle Piece Coaching. I am a trauma-informed wellbeing consultant and a change advocate. I have a background in mental health. For 20 plus years, I used to run residential care homes for adults that had suffered with their mental health, whether that be through learning disabilities, brain injury, or just through a mental health diagnosis. So before I went off and worked with the Accelerator program, but now I have mixed all my coaching and my mental health background, hence the word advocate, because things have to change. And I'm at 19, when I was starting off in the world, I was so going to change it, and then got caught up in the management trap and the money trap and everything that I was against. But I've come back to where my values really are. And that story is all around my brother, really, and losing my brother. So my story, I'm here because my brother died. And if I'm not going to apologise if I get emotional. He was my everything. We did everything together. We were only 18 months apart. We still don't know if it was suicide or not. And that uncertainty has to live with our family forever. He'd suffered with his mental health for 30 years or more. And even knowing that doesn't stop the guilt. It never goes away. And those endless questions. Nick died from a massive bleed on the brain. The post-mortem said that it wasn't from illness, it wasn't from a bang on the head, it was from trauma that indicated that it was done deliberately. It was impossible that it could have been anybody else, or maybe not impossible, but it was very unlikely. So the conclusion was made that it was self-harm, and Nick had never headbanged or anything like that. He had tried to take his life before, right at the very beginning of becoming ill, and a couple of times after that, whether that be through overdoses or anything like that, standing at the railway, whatever. He had been ill. He had been in and out in hospital. But I think the worst bit that hit us at this particular time is that he was looking like he was getting better. And we genuinely, as a family, thought he was on the up. I was the last person to see him alive. And that seriously messed me up big time, because I'd got 20 years plus of working with mental health. I've got lots of experience of working with people through trauma. People, I've sat on roofs with people wanting to kill themselves and all of those things. But when it came to Nick, I missed it, totally missed it. And it's easy to say, but you were too close. You were this, you were that. That doesn't stop the guilt. And I think that's what's so brutal about suicide. It doesn't always look like it's crisis. Sometimes it looks like recovery. People have got a smile on their face. Hope and hidden struggle can sit side by side. People can look okay on the outside while they're just dying literally on the inside. And most families don't know the signs. Most workplaces don't know the signs. And most leaders just don't know the signs. Sadly, Nick isn't the only person I know that died this way. I've witnessed, well, not witnessed, but my neighbour and a work colleague when I worked in the bank both committed suicide. The questions are the same that every one of those family members or colleagues or leaders asked the same as me. Why? Why didn't they come to me? I could have helped them. All of those things is exactly the same. I think the only difference with Nick and the other two people I know was that emotional attachment. The biggest thing, and this is why I love what you're doing, Nikki, is the response from other people was always, always the same. And when they found out, they said, I'm so sorry this has happened. But it was followed by a massive, massive full stop. They shut you down because they don't want to talk about it. They don't know what to say next. They don't know how to help you. You know, you've just lost someone that's died of suicide. They've taken their own life. There's these questions that are burning up inside. It ruins your concentration all day, every day. And here we are 10 years later, and I'm none the wiser. That guilt I've learnt to live with. It drives me forward. Nick was 50, and when I turned 50, I lived my 50th for him. I'm massively into horses. He was a musician, and I had all his music put to music so I could ride with my horses and live that for him. And as a family, that's what we decided to do. But it's that shutdown that nobody wants to talk to you about. Silence kills. The cycle just keeps going. Ignorance kills. Not wanting to offend anyone kills. So we lose people because we don't talk about suicide until it's too late. Then everybody's on social media. It's so sad that this person's taken their own life, etc., etc. But it's too late then. We need to talk about it before it happens, what builds up to it. So yeah, my big, big why is if I can stop one family feeling like mine, then that's a start,
Yeah.
to a very big question,
Mm.
really. So yeah, that's why I'm sitting here now. The knock on is 10 years later, I look at my mum and she was this strong, strong woman that worked in mental health herself, rehabilitated people when they shut all the mental health hospitals down, people that still lived there from the workhouse generations and all the rest of it, to a broken woman that won't go out the house unless she really has to. And then there's not more than 3 people there. My mum, who's in her 80s, has learnt to internet shop because she doesn't have to go into town. And that's because she has no confidence anymore. She lost a child, and I can't share that pain with her. He was my brother, not my child. So, very, very different. Yeah.
Michelle, thank you so much for sharing such a personal story. And it's interesting from the perspective of the family that have lost somebody through suicide and that shutting down of the conversation. So we encourage people to listen to the podcast so that they can open up those conversations. Of course, sometimes we don't see things, especially with people that are very close to us. Sometimes the other people are really good at hiding it, and that guilt that you talk about around why didn't I spot it? What don't I see? I think it's really important to talk about that family impact. Before we came on air, we talked about how tiring it can be. And you shared with me that Nick had been through mental health challenges for 30 years and it becomes all consuming. And I just, for me, that's a really important thing to share with other people, because people might be listening to this and going, well, I don't, I'm running out of patience. I don't feel that I'm very good. I'm not really coping with it. I'm not managing it. What would you say to those people that are having normal, natural human emotions, but really struggling with that?
It's okay. The things that we would say to someone if they were suicidal is it's okay. I hear you. It's normal. Don't do that to the families. Don't, it's all the opposite. All the things that you want to say is going, let it out, shout, scream, rant, rave, tell the professionals, talk off if you want to, right? We had to fight every day for 30 years, every day in a system that is so broken, not necessarily from the professionals that work in it, from government, for whatever reason. Our system, as we all know, is broken. There's so many cutbacks. There are times when Nick has been hurting himself or was hurting himself, but I've been sitting on him while he is biting me, while he is beating me. And the police have had to come and support and everything else, but it's taken up to 48 hours for the mental health team to actually come and support us because there were two people on to cover the whole of Northamptonshire. So, yeah, I shouted, I was angry, I was exhausted. There were times that all I wanted to do was sleep. You know, you've had nurses say, general nurses, we're not going to help somebody like that that's losing their weight. We can't afford to spend the money. And you're screaming because you've got to fight that. It breaks you. It absolutely does break you. So if anybody else is feeling the same, and I can probably be 99.9% sure that they are, rant, rave, shout. It's okay to be pissed off. It's okay to be exhausted. It's okay to feel everything that you are feeling. But please, please, please find someone to share that, because otherwise you are going to be another statistic, and we don't want that. And we have to change the way we support people, whether that be the workplace, whether that be friends, colleagues, by having these conversations, knowing how to support people is the only way that we're going to do that.
Mm. And you talked about people shutting you down, you know, when you lost Nick, and people kind of asking a question, letting you have a sentence and then shutting you down completely. I can only imagine how that felt when you're grieving a loss and you've got lots of questions going on. What would you have liked people to have done?
When you lose anybody, whether it be naturally, somebody's grown old and they've reached the end of their life, that becomes your favourite topic of conversation. It was the same when my nan died, when my dad died. We love to talk about them, right? You forget the times that he's punished me and put me in my room and told me I can't go out for 6 weeks. You know, I don't know, you wonder where I get my exaggerations from. But but yeah, I forget all of that, right? I remember my dad singing songs to me. I remember my dad being at every athletics match or every sports match, or when I played rugby or had my first broken heart. All of those sorts of things become the memory, so, and still, even then, people will shut you down. When it's suicide, what would I have wanted to say is when they say, I'm so sorry, or when they say, how are you feeling? To actually pause there and just listen. I don't need them to fix me any more than I needed them to fix Nick. I just want someone that's going to listen, that's prepared to listen. I'm shutting down, or I am in flight or freeze mode, ready to shut down. Just want to feel 1% better. I just want to feel that somebody cared enough to say, hey, I'm okay. You want a coffee? I'll make you a cup of tea. Tell me about Nick. Tell me about the good times. Tell me, all of that. Just remember him. So, or just hold my hand and just say, I hear you. So all of those things, they matter, because a suicide victim has died because they didn't feel safe. They didn't feel listened to. They didn't feel, or for whatever their reasons are, let's talk about it.
Yeah. And that's so important, isn't it, to talk about it? And I hear that a lot from, when you talk about grief, full stop, I mean, it's in no way similar, but I'm coming up to as this podcast goes out, I'm coming up to 3 years of my dad. And I remember losing my dad and people saying, sorry for your loss, and then being at a loss to say anything else. And all I wanted to do was talk about him. So, and then you don't talk about them because you think, I'm not sure you want to hear this. And it's so
Yeah.
powerful. Listening is so powerful. I always call it a superpower around listening, because if you share that space with somebody and you're there in that moment for them, and as you say, just to listen, to hold the hand, just to make a cup of tea, just to make a cup of coffee, just to be there, it's such an important thing. So thank you for sharing that, Michele. Now, I know you're doing some amazing work and you're being driven by your why. So let's talk about your new work. Let's talk about why you're doing it. And let's talk about some tips that we can give people who are listening to this podcast, who might have lost somebody through suicide, are worried about somebody in their life who they think might be thinking of taking their own life, or perhaps just dealing with some grief and really struggling at this time.
It is the well, so after working in social care, running residential care homes, etc., for 20 odd years, I don't go above the 20 because then it says how old I am. I've witnessed firsthand frontline staff carry enormous emotional and psychological weight. So that be healthcare workers, crisis teams, you've been there, the police, fire, ambulance drivers, the prison services, social care, etc., etc. These humans hear and see and hold things most of us will never ever understand. And they're expected to absorb it, go home, sleep, come back the next day, just like nothing's happened. And then it's repeat, right? Yeah, you might have a phone number that you can call, but it's not a real person. And then you've got to get through. And that takes a lot of effort to actually find a wellbeing hub. So the reality is people are burning out at rates that I don't even know. But I know when I spoke to a couple of police that most people will think about leaving the police force within the next 2 years because of burnout. Nursing, people are just leaving. They're all dysregulated. They're struggling silently whilst they're trying to hold everybody else up. And that's the main bit that I'm working in. And then the second part of that is trauma-informed leadership teaches leaders how to recognize when someone isn't okay, how to create safety, how to support that emotional regulation, and how to respond with empathy and not pressure. And this is where I really, really get on my soapbox. If everybody was mental health first aid, whether it was an awareness course or a practitioner's course or what have you, we would all have these tools in our boxes. It should be law. We have mental health first aid to put a plaster on something or know when to phone 999 or whatever. To me, it should be, if we trained people how to spot suicidal distress in the way that we train them to use a fire extinguisher, we've saved thousands of lives. And then don't even get me started on construction. Construction has the highest suicide rates of any industry. Why? Well, it's the culture. It's this, let's stay tough, that big boy stuff. Get on with it. Don't talk about it. That culture is killing people. And all somebody wants, no matter how stressed they are, or when they get to that point that they want to commit suicide, we all have our emotional backpacks. And it's all got little things, whether you've been through divorce, whether you've been through a bereavement, whether you're dealing with somebody that's ill at home and you've got caring responsibilities, whether you've been abused, we've all got this trauma backpack. And all it takes is that one little pebble of somebody that might have just said no to you, that puts it on that invisible backpack and it crumbles. So when someone is suicidal, they don't need positivity. They don't need advice. They don't need pressure. They just need safety. That simple little thing of safety. They need somebody that's feeling okay, that's regulated, that can sit beside them. They need someone just to listen, just to say, "Are you okay?"
Mm.
That's it. And shut up. Two little words. What's happened to you? Maybe that's three or four. And that's, that's all you need to be able to do. And give time.
Mm.
You don't need to solve it, right? And naturally, as human beings, we want to solve people's problems. It's not as easy as there's a cut on your finger. Well, that's all right. I'll put a plaster on it. Oh, it's man flu. Shut up. That's not what someone needs to hear. What you need to hear is, I'm here. I'm listening.
Mm.
They just want to feel 1% better. 1%. That 1% can make such a difference. You have to remember that when somebody's suicidal, they're shutting down. They're at the end. They can't move from where they are. They're frozen.
Mm.
So by that doing that one small thing, and it only has to be very, very small, is going to move them out of that freeze moment to fighting.
Mm.
And that's it. And it can't feel big either, because at that point, anything big is going to send them to a different point that, we don't want them to be in, which is jumping, really.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting you say 1%, because you mentioned the 1% earlier as well when we were talking about when a family are dealing with somebody who's taken their own life. That 1% and listening again comes into it, doesn't it? So 1%, we just want, when you're in crisis, your brain shuts down. It can't deal with any more overwhelm. It's like that. I love the pebble analogy on the backpack, because I think people can visualize that and see it. And when we reflect on our own lives and we think of that, those times when we've been in a dark place, what's caused that? And it is like that build up, build up, build up, build up. Oh, here's your extra pebble. What is that 1%? So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. And how can people do that? Or how can people take part in your course and find you and find out more information about you?
So you can find me at Puzzle Piece Coaching. I'm on every social media that you can find. And I also have a website, which is puzzlepiececoaching.co.uk. But if you go on the wellbeing part of that, there is another link that will take you to a whole wellbeing website.
Great.
I will go into workplaces. I will work with leaders. I will work with schools. I will work with anybody that wants to know what they can do when people are in crisis, or even more important, put that prevention in.
Mm.
Actually look at, how do we work with friends, colleagues, people, humans, and actually have a real open door policy? How do we have a workforce where people care? And we talk about values. Every company will have values, but how many of you live by them? Well-being has to stop being a bowl of fruit, a tick box exercise. Yoga, mental health day is just one day. There's all the rest of the year too. It's International Men's Day today. I've just spoke about construction. They're not just going to do it on International Men's Day. You know, we've talked about the Old Boy Network or the construction network of going to the pub on a Friday night. That was their place where they could put the world to rights. It was their safe place where they could be politically incorrect if they wanted to, but they let it all off their system. Now what we've got is people turning up to work drunk or on drugs, because they can't cope. So therefore, they end up either killing themselves because of the drink and drugs and health and safety, or they're taking their own lives. And funny enough, it's the hardest industry to get into. So if anybody's from the construction industry and they want to talk about how we can make it a safer place to work in for your own well-being, then reach out. And the same with frontline staff. Just having a phone line that says, ring that if you're feeling like you need support. If people are in that position, they're not picking up the phone. They're not doing it. That 1% might be, I can't help you.
Yeah.
I will listen and I will hold your hand, right? Let's dial this number together. Now talk to this person, whether that be your well-being, whether that be the Samaritans, or booking a GP appointment, or ringing the mental health crisis. It doesn't have to be anything special.
Mm.
That's it. Just
Yeah.
those few simple rules, just those looking out for the people and creating workspaces where you notice those changes in behaviour that are different from their everyday behaviour. You know, if I suddenly went quiet, people are going to worry. You know, I can talk all day. Best job ever, coming on a podcast, right? But if I shut up,
Mm.
people are going to notice.
Mm.
Look for we call it the nervous system, but are people suddenly exhausted? Are people agitated? Are people just not coping? Look at their life patterns and what they're saying. Listen for the bits that they're telling you is happening outside of work. And those emotional cues, I can't cope, you know, all of those. If we start providing and training and educating people to look for those, people aren't going to have to say, I'm so sorry of what's happened to you, and then run away.
Mm. Yeah.
Right? They're not gonna. They're gonna know what to say. I'm so Northamptonian, gonna. Yeah.
So I often
So
slip into a South London accent. So
yeah.
you
So
you've mentioned emergency services and frontline staff there, and that's really interesting because I don't know if other people can relate to this that have ever worked for emergency services, but certainly when I was in policing, there was an expectation, or I felt there was an expectation, whether it was real or not, but my perception was I should be able to cope. And I think a lot of people carry that. And so when you get told to, phone a helpline, you might even think about it, but and again, I'm just speaking from my experience. I always had that fleeting thing of, yeah, but none of my colleagues would. None of my colleagues would. I should be able to cope. I'm a police officer. I should be able to cope. Everybody else around me is coping. I should be able to cope. And then that becomes a real barrier to finding help as well.
yeah, because if you're burnt out, you're exhausted. Your body is shutting down. It's hard work
Mm.
to get the phone, find the number. Half the time it's online, you might be put in a queue. It feels just as exhausting.
Mm.
You know, the help needs to be. We did a lot of things really badly when I worked in childcare services with some quite damaged kids.
Mm.
And you might listen to disclosures, you know, and that could have been really, really long. But the one thing we did really well was you were never allowed to go home without a debrief at the end of it. How are you feeling? Well, that must have been really difficult. But I don't see that happening like it did then. Yes, I mean, I'm nearly 60. I was in my early 20s then. So, you know, time's gone on. But how many people have had such frontline staff, like the police, like, you know, an ambulance driver that's gone to a most horrendous RTA,
Mm.
right? But then their shift's ended and they've gone home. Somebody might go, are you okay? And we'll all go because that's the way our culture is. Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Yes, it was shit, but I'm okay. No, really, right? Let's sit down, let's debrief about this, right? And just having that third person, time, time. We've all got time and we can all make time because there's always something we can let go of.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, that's all it boils down to. Just make time. As a good leader in frontline staff, time. That's all you've got to do.
Yeah.
You know, and even if you're not frontline staff, right, and you're working in a busy office, you've got deadlines to meet. That's stress. And that's the stress that might be in the backpack. That might be the pebble that breaks the backpack
Mm.
because they're carrying all this other stuff that we don't know about. And as leaders, we don't want to talk about it either.
Mm.
Actually, if you're thinking about your bottom line, people are going to stay, right? People are going to feel cared for. that's going to affect your bottom line, because for every person and every pound we invest in our people, we'll get £4 back.
Mm.
So if you're all about the profit margin and that's all you're about, it's still worth your while.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's an interesting concept as well for those people listening. If you're running a business and you're worried about how to do that investment, let's just hear what Michelle's saying there around that £1 investment, you'll get £4 back. We talked about construction workers, and before we came on air, you told me a percentage, a statistic, which made me go, goodness me. Just could you share that statistic with us around suicide with
40%.
40%? And that's 40%.
40% of the suicides, yeah, will be in construction. Yeah. Yeah, because just get on with it. There's tight deadlines. It's predominantly male.
Yep.
It's changing. Yes, it is changing. And they're probably coming from an industry where it's macho and all of those things, oh, you've got man flu, stop talking about it. We've all got our problems, just grin and bear it. I'm not going to name the company, but there was an accident that happened at work where somebody was actually killed.
Mm.
The site was shut down, and it was a health and safety accident, but had a massive impact, especially for the people that were around them, that witnessed that, that saw that. But everybody had to keep the site where that happened carried on working, had to be shut down while the health and safety inquiry took place.
Mm.
But nobody, not one person, was offered any support. It was, well, we can go to the pub, we'll have a drink. And everybody probably got really drunk and they hid it. Then you're coming back on site really drunk.
Mm.
Drugs and alcohol in construction are very high as well.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to ask you one more question before we wrap up today. Right at the very beginning, you talked about learning to live with the guilt of being a family member of someone who's taken their own life. And I'm wondering what that actually means and how you learn to live with it.
How do you... This puzzle piece was set up for Nick. Puzzle, the very, very first time when my brother was brought home, I was sitting at a table doing jigsaw puzzle. And if you notice, peace is spelled Peace, and that is the fact that he did suffer with his mental health for a long, long time, and he is at peace. So puzzle piece is set up in his memory. It means that he didn't die, or he has a legacy that lives on. It allows me to bury that guilt a little bit by doing something really, really positive. It allows me to think, well, Nick didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to. He used to talk to me about most things. If he took those tablets, he's told me, and we've been able to do something about it. He'd had enough. He really, really had enough. And for 30 years, people hadn't been able to help him to the extent he needed it. So he just wanted to say goodbye. So I have that. If he'd wanted me to know as the last person, then maybe he would have let me know. So yeah, I've justified it in my own way, which doesn't make it right, because I know it doesn't make it right, but it allows me to live with it. He, time again, has allowed that to happen. Supporting mum has allowed that to happen. I wrapped her up in cotton wool for a long, long time. That didn't help. We had to let her live and to carry on and find her own way of surviving. So yeah, it's all of that. And living my life, you have to. Suicide affects everyone. Everyone that's been touched by that person, it affects. And even if I think about the other two people I spoke about, I don't think about them on a daily basis. There are many, many days, even months sometimes, I don't think about them. But Nick, I think about every single day. It might be something happy, it might be something sad, it might be something that we're really proud of, but yeah, he's still there. He's still with us in one way or another. And I love him. So this is, and things like this, I cannot thank you enough, because people will talk about it. People have to talk about it because it saves lives. And then his legacy will live on and my guilt will become less. So, yeah.
Michele, thank you so much. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for speaking about Nick and the things that you've gone through and the things that you are now putting into place to help other people. So that's Puzzle Piece Coaching, and that's is it puzzlepiececoaching.co.uk?
Yes, it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where you can find Michele. So if you are struggling yourself and you'd like to speak to somebody, or if you are in leadership, especially in construction, then please get hold of Michele via that. If you've been affected by anything in this podcast, there will be some helplines at the end, especially where we publish it in the notes, and you'll be able to make contact with them. Again, thank you so much for your time. This will just make such a big difference to people's lives. We really appreciate it, and we really appreciate you coming on. Thank you, Michele.
Thank you.
If you have in any way been affected by today's podcast episode, there are numbers at the end of the transcript which you can contact. We'd like to thank you all for listening. And if you'd like to join our Facebook group, there is also a link to that in the notes that go with this podcast. Have a great day.